more or less, give or take a few 100 million, before this all ends. But I want to point out, the Son has an end point. What does not have an end point, what does not have a conclusion, is Yahweh and Yeshua. And in order for us not to have one, we have to fall into this description we just read about the weeds and the good seed. The righteous at the end of this whole process are going to shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. In Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17. You have a vision of Yahshua in his kingdom. Matthew 17, verse 1. After 6 days, Yahshua took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and there he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. White as the light. And then appeared with him Moses and Eliah. Yahshua's face shining like the sun in the transfiguration. The sun is going to burn out. It has an end. It's someday going to be turned off. That being said, let's go to the book of Revelation and we'll see how this all ends. Revelation 19, verse 13. See, this is almost going to be a sermonette. Revelation 19, 13. Talking about the rider of the white horse, who is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and makes war. His eyes are like blazing fire. On his head are many crowns. He has a name written on him that no one knows but he himself. He is dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is the Word of Yahweh. The Word of Yahweh. The armies of heaven were following him, riding on white horses and dressed in fine linen, white and clean. Out of his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. He will rule them with an iron scepter. He treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of Yahweh Almighty, and on his robe and on his thigh he has this name written: King of Kings, Sovereign of Sovereigns. And I saw an angel standing. In the sun, who cried in a loud voice to all the birds flying in midair, Come, gather together for the great supper of Yahweh, so that you may eat the flesh of kings, generals, and mighty men, of horses and their riders, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, small and great. An angel standing in the sun. Revelation 21, verse 22. When I was doing some of this review that I'm mentioning today, it came pretty clear to me. I see around us today, everybody's blaming mankind for everything going wrong. Global warming is created by man. You know, for all those Al Gore charts in his wonderful movie where the lines didn't match, I thought I was the only one that actually saw that as he's saying it and showing how global warming is a direct result of mankind. The lines weren't matching. But I don't know if any of you have seen the other chart where they're lined up with the sunspot activity. And guess what? All those marks and lines on the graphs match perfectly. The sun is a much greater heater. Remember, the sun emits more energy in 1 second than human civilization has used since the beginning of human civilization. The sun has much greater power. And then when you start factoring in with the sunspot activity, the solar flares and everything else that take place, you begin to see that it's Yahweh that's doing all this. Don't go blaming men. Men got their share of problems. Their problem is sin. That's what our battle is. But Yahweh is the one in control of these things that are much greater than us. Like I said, we tend to think of ourselves in control of situations. We're not. We're not. Just as a little bit of an aside, because global warming is something that really sticks in my craw. Just as a little bit of an aside. Who determined that carbon dioxide is a pollutant? Because if it is, we're all polluting. Stop breathing. Carbon dioxide is what we breathe out. Kill all the animals. They breathe carbon dioxide out. You see the specious foolishness of the so-called experts on these things? People that don't believe in Yahweh, don't believe in His omnipotence, have to go to blaming somebody for what's going on, and they turn to man. We're here to work out our problems. We're not here to add to them. Revelation 21, verse 22. I didn't see a temple in the city, and I use this quite a bit, but I want to use this again in this message about the sun, so you get a little bit of a picture as to what's going on. The sun is a temporary thing in Yahweh's sight, from His perspective. I did not see a temple in the city, because Yahweh, El Shaddai, and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of Yahweh gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. There's not going to be a need for the sun. The sun was given to govern the day, and it was given to mark days, seasons, months, and years. When those things are finished, there's no more need of the sun, because we are now living with the eternal reality, which is Yahweh Himself. And that's what we need to keep in context. So I was describing some of the things about the sun to show you the magnitude of it, the greatness of the sun, but it's simply, at best, a creation of Yahweh. Yahweh is so much greater and bigger. And then you read where Yahweh is going to darken the third part of the sun, or He's going to turn the sun off. Only He has that kind of power. And that's the one we worship. Revelation 22, verse 1. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of Yahweh and of the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of Yahweh and of the Lamb will be in the city, and His servants will serve Him. They will see His face, and His name will be on their foreheads. There will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for Yahweh Elohim will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. This is the end of it. This is where it's all wrapped up. This is the conclusion of the matter. Verse 6, then the angel said to me, these words are trustworthy and true. Yahweh, the Elohim of the spirits of the prophets, sent His angel to show his servants the things that must soon take place. And that's where we come in. When you think of it in the terms of the length of time the sun can exist yet, approximately 3 billion years before it burns out, yeah, these things are going to be happening soon, very soon. And then you look around us and you see what's happening in our world today. There's no energy crisis. It's a misappropriation of energy, focusing on one small sliver of a much greater picture. There's a huge spectrum of energy out there available that Yahweh has given us. There's no energy crisis. The sun is doing its work for which it was created, and it's up to us to do ours. I want you to remember Yahweh's greatness when you take for granted this life and the things within it. Think of what it took for those little photons we think of as warmth and light to have gotten here. How they had to struggle out of the core of the sun. How they had to be absorbed and re-emitted as they were coming out through all these atoms. All the collisions they had to endure. Traveling 93 million miles in space once they did clear the sun and its surface. So we could have a nice warm spring day. Think of it in those terms. You know, we look at some of these things as small blessings. And I look at this as a blessing to have a day like today to enjoy. And Yahweh willing, tomorrow will be likewise. But these are all these small blessings that we take for granted, that we expect sometimes, are really a consequence of cataclysmic and violent upheavals constantly taking place in the sun. And I hope that in some small way we can learn the lessons that Yahweh has intended for us to derive from them. And that is, all these things are pointing toward that reality which is soon to come. The reality of seeing Yahweh's face, not having the need of a light of a lamp or the light of the sun anymore, because Yahweh himself is going to be the one giving us the light. And when that light is given, it is a light that will never end. So, anyway, gave you a little bit of a science lesson, I hope. A little bit of an appreciation, just on one small thing. You should be able to see a little more clearly Yahweh's complexity and what he's doing for us. Yahweh is great. The sun, as are we, is part of his creation. And when its purpose is concluded, it'll be lights out. And then on we go. But let's be like Joshua said, the righteous are going to be like those shining as brightly as the sun in Joshua's kingdom. And that's really what we're after. That's what we're looking for and looking toward. So we can appreciate a little bit all Yahweh has put into place long before we ever became a thought on the scene, so that we can someday live with him and see his face. May Yahweh bless you.